Welcome to Heart on the Table, a tarot-inspired podcast for mothers, healers, and humans in the messy middle of becoming.
Two therapists, two moms, one card at a time.
Every other week, we pull a tarot or oracle card
and explore its symbolism through the lenses of trauma healing, attachment theory, motherhood, and intuitive wisdom.
Together, we weave our clinical therapy knowledge
with personal connections to motherhood, spirituality, magic, and womanhood.
Reflecting on what it means to mother yourself and others
across timelines, triggers, and transformations.
I'm Bree Levitt, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Miranda Peterson, licensed clinical social worker.
It's part sacred space,
part cozy couch chat.
Expect laughter, insight, and a whole lot of heart. Okay, today is our second episode?
Yep.
Second official episode, and in some ways feels like our first episode because last episode was kind of just an introductory to us and the podcast and what we're trying to create.
Today we're going to be talking about the Fool and how it sort of plays a role in the major arcana of the tarot at large and what it symbolizes.
Yeah. And I also think just giving context to the major arcana itself and what that kind of is, I think it's cool because the more that I've been learning about the tarot, the more that I'm recognizing that like the first 22 cards is like the story. Mm-hmm. The story, like from 0 to 22, it's kind of the story of healing, I would say. Like this story of healing and maybe in like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like triangle, it would be the self-actualization.
Yes.
And so the first 22 cards kind of tell the story of what that looks like. And today we're going to start with the Fool, which is, I'm not sure if it's my favorite card or if it's the card that I've learned the most about at this point, and that's why I keep coming back to it, because a few times I've said, like, it's my favorite card. But I do think it kind of is my favorite card.
Yeah. And I remember we had talked about it before, too, just in context, preparing for this episode, that, like, the Fool is really kind of like it can go anywhere in this journey. Like, of the major arcana as a whole, the Fool can be at the beginning, it can be at the end, it can be somewhere in the middle. It can happen anytime in the journey. It can happen multiple times in the journey.
I would just say what this Fool symbolizes is applicable to any time we're starting something new. Do you know what I mean? So like, yeah, the Fool showing up at any place in the journey of healing. Like I think, which I also think that like the first 22 cards in the major arcana is also talking about like the journey through life.
Yeah.
Right? And the Fool can show up at any of those points. Any of the points where we're jumping into the unknown. The Fool, being the first card in the major arcana, the number is, like that card's number specifically is 0, right? Mm-hmm. And speaking to what you were saying about how the Fool can show up anywhere, 0 represents like anything can happen, right? 0 just represents endless possibility. Like we can go anywhere from 0. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think what you had told me from your readings was just that even the number 0, like if you look at it as an image, is the image of like an egg. And just it being like the origin of creation or like the origin of possibility that can come from starting anew. There's so much potential.
Yeah.
Within that 0.
Okay. Let's get into it then. Okay. So let's start into just some of the symbolism behind the Fool. I think with each card that so our first several episodes, I think we're still trying to scope out if we're going to do 22 episodes, one for each of the major arcana, or if we're going to break it up a little bit. We'll see. But for each of the episodes where we're doing the major arcana, we're just going to kind of look at the cards, tell you what we notice. And since we've been doing this, since we've recorded a few times before actually making it official, I've really enjoyed seeing the differences in what we each notice. And I think it just speaks to like, I don't know, just the individual psyche and how I think sometimes as humans we get so stuck in thinking or believing that people are experiencing things just as we are. especially if we're talking about like ourselves,
Mm.
right? If we're talking about our own negative self-talk, how easy it is to be stuck in like, this must be true. I think in you and I looking at the cards and like talking about what we notice that's different,
Mm.
each time you and I have both seen something so different.
I mean, these cards themselves are just supposed to bring up something in our imagination, like, or in our experience. And while they are like a collective representation of the human unconscious, like, while these experiences aren't unique to us, how we experience them is unique to us.
Yes.
And I think that is fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. So this one that I'm looking at is the Rider-Waite tarot deck. And what I am seeing looking at the Fool is I'm actually noticing the sun in the upper right corner. And the sun is kind of behind the Fool. The Fool is facing away from the sun, which means naturally that the sun is going to cast a shadow in front of the Fool. The Fool's kind of looking up and away, though, not really looking down, which is kind of telling, the Fool is on the edge of a cliff and not really watching where you're stepping. I mean, you could step right off that cliff. I'm also noticing it looks like a dog to me, or some kind of like wolf, or like right at the heel of the Fool. And to me, that just symbolizes like maybe the Fool is walking with one foot in the real world and one foot in like not necessarily the animal world, but like paying attention to what you see and also what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Those are what stand out to me this time looking at the card.
It's funny that you notice like what you see here changes. And I think that's what's cool about the cards as well. And why, as when I'm using them with clients, I emphasize greatly we're not telling the future. Because one, I don't necessarily believe in that. And two, what I'm trying to do with my clients is connect to our intuition. And these cards are simply just symbolism that can, like, it's interesting that you're seeing the sun this time. And that's not something you may have noticed. Because I think, like, this noticing the sun, it's like the sun symbolizes like rebirth, right? Like the sun coming back up again. I think I see that this person looks like they are clearly moving. I notice that they're holding on to the rose. There's like a white rose, which for me, like the way that they're holding it between their thumb and their pointer finger, it's like very delicate. Like they're holding onto this white rose. And I think for like the way that I'm interpreting that is just some sort of gentleness, right? Like where the Fool is moving and he's in movement, but he's also balancing this gentleness with the way that he's holding the rose, which I know I sure as shit did not notice that last time. And I see in their face, which this could very much be like a man or a woman, I would say. There is just like a sense of peace and a sense of looking upward. And they're holding on to a bag, which maybe that bag has like tools in it. I don't know. It looks like snow-capped cliffs, but this person is still looking peaceful, is what I am identifying here. Yeah. I think that when I'm looking at this card today, I'm just seeing a lot of like peacefulness and maybe readiness to take a leap. I don't think that they know necessarily where they're headed. All they see is that they're clearly at the end of a cliff and there's some maybe mountainous things that are happening behind them.
That what you noticed this time was different too than when we've talked about
Completely.
it before.
Yes.
When you said, I think the first thing you said was how free the Fool looked. And when you said that, my mind went to the bag and how light it looks.
Yeah.
And how, if we could take that in terms of like physical belongings, but also like emotional or mental burden too. Like the Fool looks free and unburdened.
Yeah.
And delicate and like being gentle with just life in general.
Yeah.
They're obviously facing a momentous thing right in front of them, right? Like there's a cliff. That's huge.
Yeah.
And they're embracing it with just looks like carefree.
Yeah. They don't even necessarily notice the cliff. I'm like wondering, it's kind of funny that I'm picking up on like free, like light, because I told you at the very beginning that I haven't been on social media all weekend. And not all weekend has been a stretch. Like I've dipped my toes in the water of like TikTok, but a lot, like I have been on social media a lot less. I deleted Instagram off my phone this weekend just because I felt like I needed a break. And it's funny how like connecting back to what the psyche notices, right? Like I'm looking at this card feeling less anxious than I would say the first time I recorded the Fool. Like I'm just looking at this and I'm like, okay, this person is looking upwards, like keeping their chin up and just embracing the unknown, which
Yeah.
I think like disconnecting from social media allows me to feel more reconnected to myself. Like disconnecting from all of the external pressures of what I'm supposed to be saying or in relation to social media, right? Activism, all of these things, like just disconnecting from that for a weekend and being able to reconnect to myself. Like I've read books that I've wanted to be reading. I've slept better at night because I'm intentionally sleeping with my phone outside of my room again. And it's funny how just over a few days, I simply feel more relaxed.
I love how you say that you've come back to yourself, which I think is what the Fool is.
It's coffee, isn't it? On the rug.
Kind of on the floor.
It's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Damn.
So I just spilled my coffee all over, simply just all over. I was going to grab my weighted blanket and knocked everything onto the ground, which, let me just adjust that. There we go. Is very on brand for me. So we just cleaned that up and we're just coming back. Anyways.
I think you were talking about just how taking a break from social media has allowed you to reconnect with yourself. And I just wanted to bring that back to the fact that like the Fool can come in at any time, and making the conscious effort to like come back to your inner voice, come back to your intuition, come back to what you need. I feel like social media, especially, I was talking to my husband about this earlier this week, and it is so easy to use social media as just a way to go underwater and like drown out the noise. It is noise,
It is.
but in a different way. I feel like when I use social media, I feel like I'm underwater.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of conscious effort to stay above water. But when I'm able to make that choice, I know it's so much better for me, so much better for my family when I'm not just trying to drown out the
Right.
feelings, the noise, the thoughts. Like when I'm able to reconnect with myself, I think that's what came up for me when you were talking of just disconnecting for a minute.
Yeah. And I think like even in the Fool is clearly very disconnected, right? Like the Fool has no idea what is coming next on the journey, which is why the Fool is able to feel free. The Fool is not looking ahead of themselves. They're looking up toward the sky. It is like whether or not that's an intentional choice that they're making, they are remaining disconnected. But I think the importance of that in modern times and in today is looking at what do we need to disconnect from to be more reconnected to ourselves and more just that like connected to our families, connected to our friends, connected to our intuition. There was I think like 2 years ago, Charlie was like 2. I was off of social media for a month, which I am the internet queen. Okay, I am chronically online. Unfortunately, I will admit that. So me being off of social media for a month was like a big deal. I didn't even check it once. I wasn't on Facebook. I wasn't on Instagram. I wasn't on TikTok. I was offline. And I felt different. I felt very different. And I've tried to recreate that a few times over the 2 years that has passed since, but I just haven't been able to do it. But I think being offline this weekend, it's a good reminder as to why it is important to just get offline.
And I love yes, disconnection from the external world, right? Like the Fool has no idea what's going on around. Like disconnection from the outer world, but on the other side of that, reconnection with the inner world.
Exactly.
Which I think I mentioned like the wolf or the dog nipping at the heel. Like that's,
Yeah.
I think the other side of that. And reconnecting with one's intuition, like the Fool might on the outside, right, look like a fool. but on the inside is actually really wise. I think that could be, the other side of the coin, right? There's always two sides to everything. And I like that we're talking about this today because it's really making me ponder, like, where in my life can I afford to do the same? Like, where in my life can I tune in to myself and tune out to the rest of the world? And I think that goes into play, like I mentioned, the sun being behind the fool.
Yeah.
The shadow side of the fool is the wiser self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a great reminder. I'm grateful for this reminder today to just pause, really.
Yeah.
Pause, take a deep breath, and maybe reconnect to things that I haven't been paying attention to a lot lately.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of them, like coming in to record these episodes. This doesn't seem like work to me. It seems like a time and a space that I can dedicate to just checking in and being able to share that with another human. And, when we launched this episode, like being able to share that with the rest of the world and whoever finds this space with us.
Yeah. Something that you mentioned that reminded me of something that I was reading. I think in I'm reading 2 books on Tarot for Change and then 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And I think I was reading in 78 Degrees of Wisdom last night. And she was talking about how, which I think there's an image in your archetypal book too, the image for the Fool in like a different set of cards. I don't know which deck it is. I can't remember. But the image of the Fool is like a grotesque creature. And you said the Fool is so connected to their inner world that they don't care. They're not tuning into the judgment of the external world. They are feeling safe and secure enough in their inner world. And externally, they may look grotesque or they may look like the Fool, but they are secure enough to look like the Fool because they are secure in their own inner wisdom. And it reminds me, there was a day that I was out at the park with my daughter, and she had just read one of the chapters on the Fool in one of my books. And it talks about like how it's like the Fool, something related to the Fool being out, like a fool could dance like nobody's watching. And one of the big things that all of the tarot things and literature things talks about related to the Fool is, again, the inner wisdom. And also one thing that stands out to me a lot is like, what would we do if we were never socialized to maybe believe that we couldn't, right? Or what would we do in our life, or what would we do with ourselves if we stepped away from like the rigid rules of society? And I remember being at the park with my daughter, and she K-pop Demon Hunters, okay, big thing right now. She's obsessed. So am I. I'm not gonna lie. We were at the park, and she just started dancing like a fool, like a freaking fool. And she did not have a care in the world if anyone was looking at her. She was just wiggling and moving and singing. And I remember connecting in that moment back to what I had read in my book around like, that is it. Like, this happening in front of me right now is exactly what the Fool is. Singing and dancing, which is like connecting to like your creative spirit, which is so important. And not caring what anybody else externally around her is thinking. Like, she's just having a good time. And I think that is just an important thing to remember when it comes to the Fool and thinking about like our own psyche, like what externally leads to us holding ourselves back when we know what is right for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can feel a part of my own inner child lighting up inside. And I think a big portion of therapeutic journeys could be reconnecting with that inner child. And I think that's a big thing in today's therapy world. What was it as a child that gave you that spark? My little boy, for example. And watching him be spontaneous or not care about what's going on around him or what people think or what people might say. I mean, there's so many. I'm trying to think about it from a couple of different perspectives, right? Like joining in that with my little boy would be so meaningful. And I think once I joined, I wouldn't care about what anybody else said or thought.
Yeah.
And if I also imagine myself in that space as an outsider who saw a parent connecting and interacting with their child that way, like that would make me so happy as an outsider. Like the judgments and the limitations and the expectations that come, I think, often originate from inside of us as a result of external pressures, yes. But if I think about that situation in particular, like I wouldn't necessarily be, I would see something magical happening. That is where my mind would go.
Sure.
My mind wouldn't go to, wow, I can't believe that they're doing that or they look like that or they don't care what's happening. Like that's not my thought process about that situation. And again, the Fool, I think, embodying the inner child in that, children are wiser than their years. And I think we tend to forget that as we get older.
Yeah, I think that's exactly like what you're saying. Like that is what therapy is about today, especially if you're doing like the deeper work with clients. It is about reconnecting to our like inner child and the internal wisdom of the inner child because like the Fool has not stepped into the world yet. They don't know anything about what they're going to encounter on the journey. And because of that, they are able to move freely. Like they don't know what's expected of them. They don't know what like social or societal rules are. They're just living. And I'm thinking about the innocence of a child. That's something that I hear people talk about, right? Like children are so innocent. And I'm like, I think that's the result of them not knowing the rules of the world that they live in quite yet. Like I look at my daughter and she looks to other people with so much love, right? She doesn't know that strangers could be scary. We're trying to socialize that into her, which is unfortunate, but that is a product of the world that we live in. But she doesn't quite know that yet. And because of that, she's able to engage with everybody. She's able to treat everybody equally. She doesn't have the socialization of like just the danger of it all. And while we as adults, like maybe we have that, but I think too, sometimes in our heads, we're also playing out the worst, like what anxiety is. You and I come back to this a lot in my head because in our first podcast episode, it was what stood out to me the most. Our first time recording, not our first episode. But when I said like the what ifs, right? When we're spinning on what ifs as adults because of our socialization and because of maybe some of our experiences engaging in the world, right? And engaging in like, we go to that what if, like, well, what if this goes wrong? What if this happens? What if I'm driving? What if I get in a car accident? Like anxiety, that's how it manifests. It's always the what if. I don't know. I think just like a child, they don't have that like extreme form of that yet. I think what I was trying to say is that our psyches can make that a lot louder than what the reality actually is.
I feel like the other side of that, I was following what you were saying.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I think it maybe goes back to the fact that this tarot deck has been around for a long time. And that means our experiences haven't really changed much.
Yeah.
Like it is the human experience, the collective experience at large. And going back to that, I mean, just developmentally with children, like I think it's at like age 5 or 6, they start to really be afraid of things like the dark and of the unknown. And that's to serve us in some way, right? Like it's to protect us from danger.
Yes.
But I think what's easy to forget is the positive side of what if, which is I think where you were going with that. We forget that the other side of that what if is potential. And I mean, with the Fool, not knowing or knowing that there's a cliff in front of them, whatever that means, could mean danger, could also mean, maybe they'll fly. You never know.
Yeah, it's not even a cliff. Right. Maybe like we don't see what's beneath that.
Right. And I think just giving into the possibility.
Yeah.
You don't know until you cross that threshold. You don't know until you try. And fear can keep you in one spot. People are so afraid that the end result or the outcome might not look how they imagined it, that they don't ever end up taking the first step.
Yeah.
And I think just being open to the possibility that it could be any number of things and it can change.
And the fool doesn't know where they're going, right? Like they don't know where they're going, but there's something that I read that the fool and whatever the very last card is in the journey, I want to say it's the world. I think it's the world. They're the only two cards that show movement versus like the magician we see here is just like holding still, right? Like they're framed like they're in a still photograph versus the fool. The fool is moving, but the fool doesn't know where they're going. And I think like to what you're saying, like sometimes we are afraid to take that first step because we're afraid of the outcome, or maybe that the outcome won't be what we hope it will be. And while it's good to hold on to like our hopes or our goals, we also too have to hold on to we don't know, right? Like we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know. So we have to keep moving forward anyway, and we have to be adaptable. And I can tell that you're getting watery eyed. Are you getting watery eyed? I feel like I'm getting watery eyed over here.
I just made a connection with what you said to what you had said earlier about what you noticed in the card. Okay, are you ready for this?
Please.
Holding on to that outcome or expectation so lightly is like the rose.
Oh my gosh. You're totally right. Yep. Because I kept saying lightly, like he's, yes, delicate. Yep. So it's like we hold on to, God, this is why I have therapist friends.
Okay.
Yes, we should have goals. We should have an idea where we want to go. That is what propels us forward. But we should hold on to that delicately, and we should recognize that it can change. I'm thinking about, because we're both moms, right? Like very much with motherhood. If we lean too rigidly into what we hope our children will be, then we are projecting maybe impossible standards onto them, or maybe some of our unhealed stuff onto them in hopes that like they will heal parts of us, right? But like holding on to that with some delicacy. We can hope, right? We can wish. And at the end of the day, they will be who they will be. And it is our job to support them as parents. So it's like, I don't know. I'm just making that connection, like the ultimate connection with my daughter. Like having those hopes, but holding on to those with a lot of just grace and acceptance of the unknown.
Yeah.
I have no idea where she's going. I have no idea who she's going to be. And that is her own journey. It's not mine. Right. And I can hope and I can wish and for all the things. But again, it's the one day at a time. And it's the maybe allowing her to be the fool in her own story. Like her journey is her journey and I can guide her. I can be the dog nipping at her heels. But ultimately, like it is her job to learn. It's my job to maybe teach her some things.
Yeah.
But it's her job to learn and to self-actualize, not mine to like push that onto her.
Mm-hmm. I think that's beautiful. I love that so much. And I really resonated with what you said. I think the other side of that, and one that we often see in therapy maybe, is right two sides to everything.
Yeah.
Is that for those individuals who don't get the opportunity to self-actualize, they are stuck in the narrative of perfectionism. They're not allowed to be the fool.
They were never allowed to be the fool.
They have to be perfect. And perfectionism itself is a kind of death because it's like almost like the growth is stunted. There's no room to grow because you're perfect.
There's no room to fail. There's no room to be in the unknown.
And when I say you're perfect, I mean nothing is ever perfect. Failure is a necessity to learn and grow and change. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing we are ever guaranteed in this life is change.
And that we will fail. Yeah.
It's what we do with that matters, right? Mm-hmm. Whether or not we can let that failure teach us and whether or not we can grow from it.
I think I spend a lot of time with my clients trying to get them to the fool, which I don't think that that's where when one enters therapy, I mean, and myself, I can speak for myself too, because I'm also a therapy client. I don't think we go into therapy like thinking, and I'm just connecting to like the cards, right? Like, okay, take me back to zero, right? We're like, okay, no, take me forward. Like what? I want to be here. I want to be ABC, or I'm this old. A common thing I hear in my office is like, I'm this old and I just don't have it figured out. And I think I spend a lot of time trying to get clients, and probably in my own therapy trying to get myself back to like zero. Like we have to go back. Acceptance of the things that we cannot control. Because like going back to zero gives us the courage to go forward, as we see in this card. Like embracing zero, embracing the unknown, and getting comfortable and sitting in that is what gives us the courage to move forward. Again, it's the first card in the deck is zero, and it's the first one of two cards that shows movement. All of the rest of the images are still. Mm-hmm. So it's like we have to go backwards in order to go forwards, mm-hmm. and like learn some things that we don't often learn as children, like that we can remain the fool, that we don't have to care always about the external world. Like, sure, we should be cautious, mm-hmm. right? But I don't want us to be experiencing danger when there is none, right? And that is anxiety. I can speak to that one very easily because do I know her well? Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about like curiosity and approaching life with a curious lens versus a lens of fear.
So I think that's the other side of what if, right?
Yeah.
You were talking about earlier. And I can really see this is so evident in my life when I am parenting or when I am being a mom to my little boy who, he can try something new and he can fall down and get hurt. And it hurts for a minute. And it's about repairing that confidence, right? And getting curious and let's try it again, but from a different approach. And to approach the same situation from a different perspective can give one so much knowledge and experience. Like if he had fallen down and we weren't able to repair that confidence in himself, like he would never try again.
Yes.
Right. And we would lean into the perfectionism rather than the curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the curiosity is one where growth happens. Like it's important to take a moment and to honor the emotion or the feeling, right? Like you got hurt, the pain. And then to, be a companion to him or a guide to him and trying again. And maybe it'll be different.
Yeah.
And staying open to the possibility. I think a lot of adults in this world, they tend to experience pain and they tend to shut down and they tend not to be open to hope or love or possibility, whatever the opposite of pain is for them. Mm-hmm. And to be able to sit down in a therapeutic space, sit with that pain and acknowledge it, and also be open to the fact that it doesn't always have to be that way.
Yes, and have it honored for sometimes the first time.
I mean, just because I'm thinking of the quote, like, it's as above, so below. As within, so without. As the universe, so the soul. Because you have the capacity to feel so deeply in one direction, I think of the tree. That's another quote. The roots growing down and the branches growing up. Because you have the capacity to feel so deeply in pain, you also have the capacity to feel so wonderfully in love or joy or hope or whatever that is. Yeah. You just have to give yourself the chance. And it doesn't mean that you will never feel pain again. Pain is just part of it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get stuck and hold themselves back from the potential of feeling the good, because there is also a chance that you might not feel good. Just want to feel good.
Of course. Yeah, because it's hard to feel the other more difficult emotions.
But I think we also forget our capacity.
Yes. There is something from that Tarot for Change book. She talks about like some study that shows how, I think what it said was that people's goal when they come to therapy is often to feel happy. And there is a well of research that supports that feeling the full range of emotions is what leads to like an overall sense of well-being. So the goal is not to just feel happy. The goal is not to just feel good, because we're human. We're not going to feel happy every day. We're going to have off days, right? Like I think about with children, like we have this, there's like a societal expectation that children are supposed to feel good every day. Like my daughter didn't want to go to preschool last Friday. I have days where I don't want to go to work. Why would I pressure her to like, no, 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 you have to be happy. Like we're going to preschool. It's going to be, no, like we can honor this is difficult. You don't want to go to preschool today. I get it. It's tough. And we're going to be curious. What might happen at preschool today? We get like a little calendar of like what they're doing. So I can kind of like get her excited, right? Like you're going to go mix colors. You're going to paint today. And instead of like, I don't know, trying to talk her out of the feeling of feeling a little disgruntled, just honoring that. Yeah, you don't want to go today. You're tired. You want to stay with mom and dad. And we're still going to go, right? And we're going to approach it with curiosity. It's coming back to like the emotions wheel and feeling all like the full range of emotions. The goal is not to be happy every single day. That's impossible, right? Like we're not going to feel happy every single day. The goal is to be able to experience the full range of emotions and to tolerate them. Feel the full range of emotions and be able to tolerate them is what leads to an overall sense of well-being, right? Like we have to feel the pain. And we have to also recognize that because we feel that pain and because we feel those more difficult emotions, we too do have within us to experience those more positive ones as well. It might feel risky when we've experienced grief or we've experienced loss. Like we're going to be risking something when we lean into relationship again or we lean out into the world again. It is a little bit risky. And we can learn that it's a worthwhile risk to experience it all.
I was just thinking about one of the first things you had said about being able to hold that pain simultaneously, like, right, being able to acknowledge it and honor it. And I got this visual in my head about a wound, like a gaping, bleeding wound. And going back to what we had said earlier about coming to therapy and thinking that the purpose of it is just going to be to move forward. But unless we turn towards that wound and give it the attention that it needs, unless we disinfect it so it doesn't get infected or manifest in other ways, like that wound is going to constantly show up in our lives for us in different ways.
Yes.
It's going to constantly be begging for our attention. It's going to get bigger and louder and seems like, maybe the pain will rule our lives. It's all we're ever capable of feeling. And I think that's where people shut down.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage to face that wound or to face our demons or whatever we want to call them.
Yeah.
The monsters, the scary part, the shadow, the pain. It takes a lot of courage to face that because we don't know what that means, right? Like whether the pain is a result of our own making or whether it was a result of someone we hold dear.
Yes.
Right? Like
there's someone that was supposed to love us.
that takes a lot of courage and it's scary to do alone, which I think is important to have somebody there to do it with you.
Yes.
Right? Somebody who can sit there to remind you to come back to the present moment, that you do not have to be engulfed in the pain. Right? You can sit with it. You can listen to it and hear what it has to say, to feel seen, to feel validated.
Yeah.
That's all.
I often say that like most of our trauma happens in relationship. So it requires a relationship to heal. There's the very popular, like, well, you have to love yourself first before you can love someone else. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, I get what that's trying to say. But we are connection-seeking beings. And we come into this world completely helpless, seeking safe relationship to nurture us, to care for us. And if that doesn't happen, that is how we learn to love ourselves, is through those initial attachments. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to be very hard for us to learn our worth. It's going to be hard for us to learn that, like, it wasn't our fault that someone wasn't able to nurture us and care for us. But it's going to be very hard for us to figure out how to love ourselves without leaning back into relationship in some way. Trauma healing requires a leap into the unknown. I think a lot of people, when they come to therapy, are really nervous if they're going to be let down again. But we have to heal within our relationships. Whether that's therapy, we have a really good friend, or we find a group. We can find this in different ways. Therapy, I always like to say, I think I said it maybe last time somewhere, like therapy is a privilege to be able to access. But that healing does have to happen in relationship to others.
Is there any sort of like reflection or
Yes.
ponderment that we want to leave them with?
Okay, I think something that we want to do with each episode is kind of just give some content for you guys as the listeners to kind of reflect on. And in reflecting on the Fool today, maybe journaling at the least, just taking some time and some space to think on it. I think a good reflection is just what, like, how do I want to phrase this? What would you do in your life what would you do in your life if you weren't afraid of what others thought?
I like that.
If you fully connect to your own intuitiveness and your own intuition and your own thought, what would you do? And I just encourage you to connect to yourself and recognize the ways as to which that you've been socialized or the ways as to which the external pressures of the world have maybe splintered you off from like your truth.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, again, if you have only the time and space to think about it, that is enough. If you want to give it a little bit more time and space, maybe pull up the image of the Fool. Yeah. Whether you have your own tarot deck or whether it's just Googling the image, sit with that for a minute and see what you notice about the card. See what speaks to you and maybe reflect on maybe what's coming up in your current situation, current experience that is reflective of that.
Okay. I think this concludes our discussion on the Fool today.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. It was such a good conversation.
Yep. Thanks again. And we'll have a new episode. All 3 of these first episodes, we're trying to release them at the same time. So if you listen to this one, you should listen to the next one because we're going to keep going through the story of the major arcana. Okay?
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us in today's conversation. We hope this space offered you a spark of meaning, a reminder of your own strength, or simply the comfort of knowing you're not alone in the messy middle of becoming.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to share it with a friend, subscribe, or leave us a review. It helps this little community grow.
You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Heart on the Table Pod, where we share more reflections, tarot pulls, and behind-the-scenes glimpses of the podcast.
Until next time, may you keep noticing the magic woven into your everyday life.
Please remember, while we are both licensed clinicians, this podcast is not therapy and does not create a therapeutic relationship. The conversations here are for educational and reflective purposes only. If you are seeking mental health support, we encourage you to connect with a licensed provider in your area. Thanks for listening.